Not everyone can brag about having a 20-year-old box of shame, and we're not gonna finish it today either. I started collecting Warhammer with orcs and goblins, and little 10-year-old me didn't know shit about tinning paints or removing mold lines. The models used to be a lot simpler back then, usually having the body in 1 or 2 parts at most, and everything being really accessible, no sub-assemblies required. These goblin wolf riders were my favorites from back in the day, but you can really see the lack of shading and color variations. I bought the Ironjaw spearhead box when I restarted the hobby around a year ago, and decided to save the Megaboss from it for when I was confident enough that I could do the model justice. I started by base coating the entire model in black with a brush, just like in the good old days. After getting all the parts base coated in black, I started to apply the layers for the orc skin. I started with orc skin mixed with a bit of black to get a dark base tone, and applied Mantis Warrior's green contrast paint on top. For the details and volumetric highlights, I started with mood green and then added a bit of yellow into the mix. For the final highlights, I mixed a bit of white with the green-yellow mix. Trying to get all the skin tones mixed into a smooth gradient was probably the hardest part of this paint job, as I wanted to really highlight the musculature of this model. Doing this in sub-assemblies means I won't be painting in the most efficient manner and end up doing a lot of back and forth, especially on the skin. I dotted the eyes with a bit of white before glazing them with Evil Sun Scarlet and then highlighting with a bit of orange. For all the teeth, I base coated them in Screaming Skull, followed by a heavy wash of Skeleton Horde, not once, but twice. Every tooth gets highlighted with Wraithbone to give him that Pepsodent smile. I put on a painting handle using a mosquito spray cap and started painting on the pants using Rhinox hide. For the subsequent layers, I started adding more Fang Brown into the mix. I use Lead Belcher to get all the metallic parts and the chainmail. Also, as a throwback for my previous models, I decided to give him the white dick slap of Saruman onto his face. For the parts of the loincloth, I use Corn Red and then highlight them with Evil Sun Scarlet. All of the yellow armor parts start with a base coat of grey, and then I glaze it with some Flash Gits yellow. Doing a lighter undercoat helps the yellow stand out more, and it needs fewer layers to get to full opacity. After all the yellow armor bits, I decided to give him one red knee pad, which you can see here thanks to my perfect camera angle. We start shading the yellow armor panels with thinned down skeleton horde and wash the whole panels with it. If the shading isn't strong enough, you can do a second layer of shading. While letting the shade dry, we can do a bit of highlight on the black armor panel with some dark grey. Flash Gitch yellow is used for the highlights, and we mix a bit of white into it to get some final highlights. Doing yellow armor panels really is one of the hardest things you can try and do, especially with these models. But I basically used this video as a reference for all of those. For the black armor panels, I ended up doing a heavy dry brush with some grey and then dulling it all down with some black Templar contrast paint. And now we're back to highlighting all of the yellow armor panels with some Flash Gitch yellow with a bit of white mixed into it. The highlights are done using a stippling motion with some scratches to indicate some battle damage. For some more battle damage, I use a sponge with a bit of Rhinox hide in it to make some chipping onto the armor panels. I did want to follow a bit of the box art and decided to give these black flame-like details onto the knee pad and some other armor panels. Now the model was ready to attach the front jaw piece, and a second half of the skull armor. To base coat the big skull on his shoulder pad, I started basing it with Screaming Skull, which I also used to highlight all of the wrist straps and the bandages. I decided to shape the big skull on the shoulder pad using my super wash that has some Agrax Earthshade, Skeleton Horde and Lamian Medium in it. And after that I started to highlight all of the bone details, first with Screaming Skull and then proceeding to Wraith Bone. Because of the complexity of this model and difficulties filming it from all the different janky angles, I did decide to do some of the more intricate details off camera, so don't be surprised if some details suddenly pop up in the middle of the video.
Now we're going for the Golden Demon mode with this paint job, so I'm spending extra amount of time, especially with all the bone details. I am also gonna enter the Squidmar Open painting competition with this model, and I'm hoping to get at least a bronze in the standard category.
To deepen and accentuate all of the details on the bone, after the final highlights I come back with very thinned down Skeleton Horde. For all the leather straps, I base coat them in Rhinox hide and then start highlighting them with Mormfang brown.
For the final highlight color, I add just a bit of Kislev flesh into the Mormfang brown and stipple it onto the leather straps.
For the blood leather skull on his other shoulder pad, I base coat the whole thing in black, then I dry brush lead belcher to the metallic parts. For the actual skull itself, I use corn red, Evil Sun Scarlet, then for the highlights I mix just a bit of Troll Slayer orange into the mix. I really like how the Bloodletter skull came out. In the original box art it's just a skull, but I think it really gives it more character to leave it red.
Highlighting the red, I just use a glaze-like consistency on the Evil Sun Scarlet and just keep going and doing the highlights layer by layer. Here I mix the final highlight color, just freehand it on the palette by mixing some Troll Slayer orange and Evil Sun Scarlet. The teeth get the same treatment as every previous bone part, just base coat, slap a wash on it, and then highlight. Time to get to the final piece of the model. I start by base coating the metallic part of the axe in black, and then of course dry brushing with lead belcher. This is practically my go-to method for any dark metallic or weapon with steel. For the hand, I do the same previous steps, just add a dark green for the base coat of the skin. For the wooden part, I just slap a layer of Rhinox hide on. For the leather straps, I base coat them in white, then add a dark wash, and then start highlighting the skin of the arm. Trying to match the orc skin to the other hand and the previous pieces was really a hassle because I did not memorize what exact order did I do all of those, and also because this arm is angled downwards, the light hits it on a different angle, so I had to change how I paint that up. and there is the weapon arm attached to it. I proceeded to add also the skull necklace. At this point I was pretty burned out on this project, so I just decided to finish everything off camera, and it's time to put it on a big ass tactical rock I made out of pine tree bark. I first glued a slab of bark onto the base with some regular ass super glue. I check the fit of the model on where it goes, and I need to trim the plastic rock from underneath the Megaboss's feet. After spray coating the entire base in black, I start applying a dry brush of 50 degrees of different grays. And then it's time for the beauty shots.
Remember to dislike the video, report the channel, and drop a hate comment down below. Thanks.